You guys, today we are going to make the easiest project ever. A whole bunch of you have been asking me, what do I do with all my leftover mask fabric? You know, even though we're kind of in the thick of it again, and I was selling masks at my booth this weekend. But anyways, one awesome thing that you can use for your scrap fabric is to make scrunchies. So I'm going to show you two different ways to make these. You can either use like a regular hair tie, like a store-bought hair tie, or you can use, you know, about 9 inches of elastic, a decent size elastic. And if you're like me and you've been making masks all year, you probably have a decent amount of elastic lying around. But either way, these are super easy and super fun, and I know you're gonna love this project. So let's get going. Alright guys, one of the absolute best things about this project is it's perfect for using your leftover mask scraps. This is my medium size mask, and this is my adult size, my large mask. And I've got, you know, hundreds and hundreds of these already cut out from making masks. And they are the perfect size, because what you want is a piece that is somewhere between 16 to 18 inches long. You could even go as long as like 22 inches. And you want something that's at least 3 inches wide, you know, and these are going to be like 4.5. The longer you make it, the more ruffle you're going to have scrunched. And the wider you make it, you know, the wider the band around the elastic is going to be. So you can play around with it a little if you like a fluffier scrunchie or, you know, a tighter scrunchie. All right, guys, so the first one we're going to work on is the one where you use a 9-inch piece of elastic. So all we're going to do is fold this in half and basically sew it into a tube. I'm going to back stitch at the front and the end, or sorry, the top and the bottom. All right, there we go. And in case you are wondering, I am using just a 1/4 inch seam allowance just to make sure that I catch both sides of the fabric. If you need to stop and, you know, readjust so that the fabric stays lined up, by all means do that. And I'm also using the same Isacord silver gray neutral thread that I love to use on all of my projects, and there is a link for that down in the comments below. Alright gang, for the next scrunchie we're going to be using just a regular old hair tie, and I made sure to grab one that's got a good seam on it. I don't want it snapping on the inside. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold it inside the fabric here, and I'm going to sew a small stitch, making sure that I don't catch the elastic, because we want it to be able to move around freely inside. So I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because if these layers shift a little, that's okay. It'll still make sure that I catch both layers of fabric. And it doesn't matter if this isn't perfect. No one's going to see the seam on the inside. All right, so as you can see, it's in a little pocket, and I can move it around freely. The next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to just swing this around so that the scrunchie is on the inside here, and then that way it'll make it much easier to sew, because we'll be working around the outside edge of the fabric as opposed to trying to stitch around the inside of that elastic. So I'm just gonna pull a little bit through the elastic, as you can see, and I'm gonna try to line up my edges as best I can and just pinch it to hold in place. There's no point in using pins in this project. And when I do this, I'm going to keep my needle down just to hold my fabric in place. And as you can see, I'm just pulling a little bit of the fabric, tucking it in and around that rubber band to make sure it's cased inside. I'm just shifting my fabrics a little, lining them up, and continuing on. And again, my needle's in the down position, tugging a little bit of that fabric out here, lining it up. I'm making sure I have a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance, just because, you know, things can shift a little when you're working with projects like this. So if you get off center, it's no big deal. You'll make sure you got both layers of fabric still. And it doesn't have to be perfect. They don't have to be perfectly lined up. This is going to be the inside seam. No one's going to see this. All right, back stitching at the end to keep it in place. And so now you can see we almost have a scrunchie. We just got to turn it inside out. All right, you guys, for this next part, we're going to use two of my favorite sewing tools of all time, which a lot of people wouldn't necessarily consider these sewing tools, but a pair of hemostats, if you have them, and a knitting needle can make turning these inside out way easier. And if you don't have these, there's links for them down below in my comments section, in the description section, where you can go purchase them on Amazon. They're really helpful, not just for turning things inside out and stuff, but also when you're ironing. If you've been following my videos for a while, you'll see I use them quite a lot when I am doing different projects. So the first thing we're going to do with this scrunchie, with your own elastics, we're going to turn the top inside out, stick your knitting needle in there, and just gently tug. You'll see a lot of people who do this by hand with their thumb, or they might use a safety pin. This is the easiest way to go. If you don't have a knitting needle, you know, use a chopstick. Use the rubber eraser end of a pencil. You don't want anything pointy because it'll poke a hole through the the weave of the fabric. There's a little baby here today. Say hi, Dylan. So anyways, once you get it turned inside out like this, all you have to do is take your elastic, and this is like 9 inches. This is a good size for just any regular scrunchie. Of course, you could make them a little bit smaller if you wanted to do like little pigtail size ones, or larger, you know, if you have like really thick hair, or you want to do some like extra large scrunchies, which I've seen some really cool extra large scrunchies like made out of velvet and stuff. This is my favorite thing about the hemostats, is it just grabs onto stuff and you can just stick it right through. Obviously this isn't, you know, a tricky thing to do, but it definitely, if you're making a bunch of these, if you sell what you sew like I do, little bits of time saved throughout the day save up a lot of time in the long run. So anyway, I've got it right here. I'm going to tie a sturdy knot, okay? This is the way I tie the knot. Together, same way I do my masks, in one loop together, okay? You know, and then just really pull it, you know, especially if you're going to be selling these to the public. You don't want to sell someone a shoddy product. You know, you want it to be awesome. You want them to come back and buy more and tell everyone how great they were. So I really like this nice rounded elastic. The next thing we're going to do is just fold this one end in on itself, you know, no more than 1 inch. And then you're going to tuck that knot in, and we're going to tuck in this raw edge just so it completes the circle. And then all we have to do is stitch it up closed. Okay, so for our hair tie scrunchie, same thing. We're just going to turn it inside out. You know, I'm doing this one with my finger just so you can see. This can be, you know, a little bit of a pain in the butt. You just got to kind of push and pull and tug gently, you know, not too rough. You don't want to pop your seams or stretch your fabric out. So we're just going to work our way around the circle, you know, just cinching it out inch by inch. Extremely easy. You know, this would be a great project to do with, say, like Girl Scouts or something like that. It's also something you could definitely do by hand sewing. You do not need a sewing machine for this. I mean, you're talking about, you know, an 18-inch straight stitch and then one little stitch to close it shut. That's a piece of cake. Great little hand project for Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. Boys sew too. My grandfather was a quilter, and my dad used to sew his own tents. And my grandpa is actually the reason I started sewing to begin with. He was a carpenter, so, you know, the math and everything came naturally to him, and I just always thought it was so cool that he was a man who sews, and he is the reason I sew, even though both of my grandmothers sewed, but don't tell them that. So anyways, we're going to work this last little bit out. There we go. And we're going to repeat the exact same process by just folding under, folding under about 1 inch there of that last bit of fabric. You know, you don't need more than 1 inch, just enough to cover up the raw edge. And, you know, because anything extra you tie in there is going to take away from these nice, you know, ruffly scrunchy bits. And then tuck it in just like we did with the last one. All right, and we're just gonna, you know, I've seen where people do it like this and they sew it like that. Don't do that. Take a couple extra seconds and line it up so it looks nice and finished, and then we'll go to the machine and we're gonna stitch this shut. All right, gang, we have our 2 scrunchies here. We're gonna do the exact same thing. They both have the exact same seam, so we're just gonna run a nice sturdy stitch down there to hold it in place. And what I like to do is, you know, work my elastic towards the center, and then I'm gonna take a minute just to make sure this top edge is lined up nice and neat so it doesn't look sloppy. Back stitching, I like to run a nice heavy stitch and back stitch all the way up to the elastic before I run over the elastic. Then I will come back down and catch the elastic, back stitching over it one time. The reason I do that is because the elastic is pretty bulky. You know, sometimes your needle can get hung up in there, and I definitely want to make sure it's down in the center of the scrunchie, not up here floating around in the middle. Not that that's really a big deal, I just think it gives it a cleaner look. So here's this one. I did such a good job making this one, I can't even find my seam. There it is. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing on this one. I love this fabric. I purchased this fabric from Quilting by Rita on Etsy. She has such a great shop, and this I actually bought in 108, so I got way more fabric for my money, and she ships so fast. She's the best. All right, there we go. So now all we gotta do is snip the loose threads, and we have 2 awesome scrunchies done in 2 different ways. Alright guys, how freaking easy was that? I love these. I was just snipping off the last little bits of loose threads. Here's another tool I love. These are my little Singer professional sewing scissors. I've had them for years. I've even burnt them with my iron. But anyway, they're great because they have that nice sharp little tip and nice cushiony holes for your fingers. So if you are selling what you sew like I do and you're making, you know, 150 scrunchies, it definitely pays off to have a nice cushioned pair of scissors. And these are down in the comments below as well. And I believe they are actually on sale this week for like 10 bucks on Amazon. So if you don't have a great little pair of scissors like this, check them out. Anyways, here we go. These are so awesome, you guys. And you know, the thing is I made these out of 1 piece of mask fabric, and I used just slightly less the amount of elastics that I would have making a mask. So if I charge, you know, 5 bucks each, I'm getting the same return on my project as I would if I was selling a mask. And that got me thinking, like, how great would it be, especially with back to school and everything else, if you have matching masks and matching scrunchies, you know? People who work in doctor's offices, teachers, stuff like that, they might love that, especially if you could find something with like your local school colors, you know. These projects are so great and so easy, the sky's the limit. I also think they would make a really great project for, say, like a Girl Scout troop or a Boy Scout troop. You could hand stitch all of this. You're only talking about 1 seam that's like 18 inches long, and then, you know, stitching it shut. That's a piece of cake and a great, you know, easy beginner project that's really fun, and it's something that they could actually use and enjoy. So anyways, I hope you guys loved this project. I hope you're staying safe and doing really well. Thank you so much for coming back. I hope to see you again. And if you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe if this video helped you out. I really appreciate it. Take care, you guys, and I hope to see you soon.